my dad, because he was an alcoholic, he didn't know what he was doing. But every time there was something that would trigger a fight, he would take it out on either me or my sister. And one time I remember him holding me against the wall, choking me, and I didn't know how to react to it. I knew that deep down that was my dad. I had to leave the house, and at the age of 17, that was when I couldn't take it anymore, because I remember before that, I was living in and out of the house, and my dad, one night, he was like, if you stay here, if you sleep in this house one more night, you're not gonna wake up the next day. I was scared, and I remember it was like 1 in the morning or around that time. And I called one of my friends, and I was like, what? I had to leave because, I can't live here anymore. And so I called my friend, and we moved out. And for about, I remember it was like maybe a year straight, I didn't have a home. I was living from house to house, and that was for about maybe 4 or 5 years. That I remember when I moved out, I broke my phone. All of social media, I disconnected it so that even if my mom would try to look for me, even if my brother tried to look for me, they wouldn't be able to find me. That's when I started going out. It wasn't just Saturdays that I would go out, it was Fridays that I would go out. And I would try to find that happiness there in the clubs and drugs and in alcohol, smoking. And so I started working at a lounge when I was at the age of 19, towards the end of the year. And I started working there, and everybody welcomed me, and I thought, hey, this is my family, I used to smoke every single day. I would wake up maybe like in the afternoon, like maybe around, I would say 11, 12. And instead of making myself a cup of coffee, I would make myself my hookah. And I would smoke so much to the point where it's like if I didn't smoke, I felt like I needed that oxygen. And when I would go to work, I would drink. The reason for the drinking was I was trying to cover that emptiness that I had, that I tried to cover for so many years. Being raised as an independent woman, I started thinking about my career, raising, opening up my own business, doing all these things, but yet I had all these plans, but I couldn't do them because all my money would go to alcohol. All my money would go to the hookah, the tobacco, the drugs. My lowest point was when I didn't have any other way out. As much as I tried to quit smoking, as much as I tried to quit drinking, even in my sentimental life, the guy that I was dating, he couldn't make me happy. My mom couldn't make me happy. My friends couldn't make me happy. I knew about the church because of my sister. My twin sister actually started coming here. And at the time that I came to church, I think she was already an assistant. But before that, my parents started coming here. This was when my dad decided to change, but I didn't care. And my dad did try to apologize many times, saying, please forgive me for everything that I did in the past. He wished he could go back and change everything, but I didn't want to do that. I had so much hate. When I came to church, that was my lowest point. That was when I decided to just listen to God and just give my entire life to God. And the first thing that I did was I left my boyfriend, because I said, well, you know what, if he's the one holding me back from giving my life, I don't want him. You know, I would open the Bible, I would read the Bible, but while I was reading the Bible, I was still smoking. And I would say, God, what else do you want me to give to you? You know, and it's like, but it was right there. You know, it was that. The day that I decided to give it up was, I went up to one of my friends that comes to church, and I said, hey, you know, I really need help. Like, I want to give it up, but I can't. I don't know how, you know. And that day, I remember sitting down with a few people from church, and everybody started sharing what they used to go through and how they overcame it. By asking God to help them, then I said, okay, you know what, I'm gonna give it a try. The whole day, I remember I remained in prayer the whole day, so that I wouldn't even think about, you know, driving to the hookah lounge after work. A week passed, and then I finally went up to one of my coworkers and I said, hey, you know, I know you don't know my personal life, but I'm so proud of myself that I wanted to share it with you. And they said, what's going on? And I said, well, I used to smoke for over 10 years, and it's been a week that I didn't smoke. And you can even tell how happy they were. They asked me, how did you do it? You know, and I said, you know, through prayer, you can overcome anything. You know, if you give your life to God, you can overcome anything. And even though they didn't, you know, at the time, they didn't believe in such thing, you know, now they ask me, hey, you know, like, where do you go? Or like, if I'm feeling like a little bit of just like, hey, I need that father-daughter moment, I'll just like, you know, turn and be like, all right, I'm gonna go visit my dad today, you know. And then today, the relationship that we have, people are like, wow, you were always you know, you always had that father-daughter bond, didn't you? And I'm like, no, actually, I never had that. With God, anything is possible. Clearly, anything is possible. If he can change my dad, if he can change me or any of my family members, he can definitely change yours. Today I'm happy. I look at everything that, you know, I went through, and everything, I believe that everything happens for a reason. Every battle that we go through, you know, it makes us stronger. As a person and as a woman of God, I believe that when I'm going through something or through a battle, or, you know, something doesn't go my way, I know that that situation is, even though maybe right there and then, I won't understand why I'm going through it. But I don't ask God why I'm going through it, you know, because He has a perfect plan for us. He has a perfect plan for me.